a regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards. I'm so glad you're with us on the program today. Joining me on the program, Larry Correia. Now, you know Larry from the incredibly popular Monster Hunter series of books, but he has a brand new book out, nonfiction, in defense of the Second Amendment. And what a time for this book to be released, as you've got California Governor Gavin Newsom complaining that, is this the cost of freedom, these mass shootings that we're having here? Why can't we just ban these guns? Why can't we just eradicate the right to keep and bear arms? Because we'll all be safer, he says, if we were to do just that. Larry and I and tens of millions of Americans, of course, disagree. And as I mentioned, Larry's new book, a fantastic addition to the library of not just gun owners and Second Amendment supporters, but frankly, anybody and everybody who cares about this issue. Take a look and a listen. Larry, thank you so much, sir, for coming on the program. Congratulations on the new book. I am so excited about this.
Well, thanks for having me on, Cam. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, listen, I got to ask, for folks who, you have led a very interesting life and you've got a fantastic literary career, but what made you decide that you wanted to step back into the world of nonfiction and write a defense of the Second Amendment?
Well, it's kind of funny. So I've been a novelist for the last 12 years or 13 years. I'm very successful at that, done really well. But before that, I was in the gun business. I was a CCW instructor. I did a lot of lobbying. I was actually a machine gun dealer. I was an SOT Title VII for the gun nuts out there. And I've been involved in guns, huge gun guy for 30 years. And so, and then Regnery Publishing wanted to put out a definitive guide to the Second Amendment debate to kind of help move the needle. They wanted to arm our people with good facts and good arguments, and also kind of try to move fence sitters. And they said, who do we know who first is a good writer, and then second really knows guns? And one of the editors had worked on some of my thrillers and science fiction novels, and he's like, "Oh, I've got the guy." Yes, that's how this happened. I'm a huge gun nut and huge Second Amendment advocate. And so I jumped at the chance. This is something that I've 30 years I've been studying this topic. And so I was really happy, and I hope it moves the needle. And honestly, so far from the reaction, it's been super positive. People are really liking it. So I hope it helps. Well,
listen, I got to tell you, it's coming out at such an incredibly important time because, after the Bruen decision, not only was that a big win for gun owners and Second Amendment supporters, but I think it was a real wake-up call for the anti-gun activists out there. And we have seen this renewed push to, ban so-called assault weapons from, California, Washington State, all the way over to New York. Basically, any blue state right now, in the wake of the Bruen decision, they are going after the right to carry. They're going after what you can own, who can own firearms. They are cracking down in a way that I haven't seen in 20 years of covering this issue. This is such a sustained, broad push to criminalize a constitutional right. And you're hearing people like Gavin Newsom, who was on CNN on Tuesday night, say, is this the price of freedom? These mass shootings that we've had in Half Moon Bay and in Monterey Park, is this the price of freedom? So how would you respond to Gavin Newsom, Larry?
Well, Gavin Newsom is a vulture. He's a clown. The guy is always perched waiting for a tragedy, and he swoops in to dance in the blood. You're absolutely right. The push is nuts right now because I think Bruen poked him in the eye, and also said that they're super illegal, unconstitutional, ridiculous shall issue concealed carry laws were no longer allowed. I'm sorry, not shall issue, may issue concealed carry laws, which basically is just always turns into a racist bribery scheme everywhere that has it. Supreme Court struck that down. It was they got poked in the eye, and so they had to redo their laws anyway to try to agree with Bruen. Instead, the stuff they're handing back is so ridiculous. Colorado, Maryland, New York, Illinois. It's interesting to push, and then on the federal level, at the same exact time, you have the ATF doing their new super absurd brace ruling. I'm sure we'll talk about that. It just causes millions of us to be felons overnight. I think we've really got them kind of on the ropes, because a lot of this stuff has got the stink of desperation on it. And like in Illinois, there's 110 counties, I think, or something like that in Illinois, and like
Mm-hmm.
90 of them, the sheriffs are saying they're not going to enforce it because it's that blatantly unconstitutional.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, I've talked with a number of Second Amendment attorneys since Bruen who have, and really over the past couple of months, who have made the analogy that these blue state Democrats today are acting like Southern Democrats did after Brown versus Board of Education, right? And they've invoked the specter of massive resistance. And I think that there are a lot of parallels to that, quite honestly. But, when you talk about they're on the ropes, I think you're right. And we saw that same reaction, frankly, after Brown versus Board of Education, right? Where I live in Virginia, the governor imposed massive resistance to the point that Prince Edward County, which is the adjoining county to where I live, shut down the public schools for 5 years rather than integrate. And they provided vouchers to white kids to go to private schools. They didn't provide vouchers for black kids to go to private schools. And that was a case that the Supreme Court took up. It's called Griffin versus Prince Edward County. That wasn't decided until 1965. It was 11 years after Brown versus Board of Education. Now, ultimately, those laws fell, right? And now we've got integrated schools in Prince Edward County. Farmville is a very different place than it was in 1960 or 1965. But these things do take time. And I think it's important that gun owners understand we are in the civil rights fight of our generation. And as flagrant as these abuses are, unfortunately, the court kind of works at its own pace and at its own time, right?
Yeah, if you think about it, like, for example, the Fifth Circuit just declared the bump stock ban to be the ATF's unilateral bump stock ban to be unconstitutional. That took 4 years. And that's 4 years of law-abiding citizens getting rolled up in this awful situation. So how long will it take for these bans to get struck down in court? And then also the courts are, once again, as they work their way through the courts, if you have a leftist court, they're just going to rubber stamp it. They're going to say, "Oh yeah, we're cool with whatever. Everything is good." They'll rubber stamp it, and so it could take years. And that whole time, if you're not complying, you're technically committing a felony, and they will prosecute you and they'll throw the book at you. So I like with the ATF thing being federal nationwide. I'm hoping that some judge within that 120-day window, throws the brakes on that, just because it is nationwide and there are judges who are sane. So we'll see what happens there. But like the Illinois one, I know for a fact there are, I think, 6 or 8 lawsuits already. New York, there's a bunch of lawsuits. They just had the deal with the Second Circuit is being forced to examine, I want to say, like 4 or 5 cases at the same time, all against the same New York
I think
law.
at least 4, yeah. Yeah, and you're right. I mean, and listen, the Ninth Circuit is, full of, I think we've got more than a dozen lawsuits going on against various laws in California. And the Bruen decision did give us, I think, the basis to overturn a lot of these laws, right? The state now has to try to justify these things by pointing to similar laws throughout history. Larry, I mean, listen, you know this as well as I do. I'm sure you talk about this in defense of the Second Amendment. The types of bans that we're seeing now, just simply, there are no analogs. When the lever action, rifle was first becoming popular, you didn't have moms demanding bans on lever action, right? When nobody's out there trying to ban revolvers and, throw Samuel Colt in jail for, misleading the American public. These are modern creations of the modern gun control movement who are now trying to redefine our right to keep and bear arms into nothingness, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's fascinating that when the Supreme Court said you have to have a historical analog, that immediately states like California, for their defense, they went and found the historical analogs are the most racist things you've ever heard of. And it wasn't like, well, we don't want undesirables and uppity people with their inferior eugenics and their small heads that don't hold as much, phrenology to, and that's the laws they're citing, are these like absurd, ridiculous, crazy. We don't want the Irish or the Catholics. We don't want the Poles to be armed in New York City. Because if the Irish are given to drunken rages, and we can't let them have repeating revolvers.
Yeah, you're right. The statutes they're citing are so facially unconstitutional. You're like, okay, well, thanks for giving us that evidence. That just proves our case, quite frankly.
I am just imagining Clarence Thomas laughing his butt off when they put that in there.
Yeah, right. So, what do you hope that folks? First of all, I got to guess that you're hoping that non-gun owners will pick up this book as well, right? This isn't just for people who are already gun owners, who are already Second Amendment supporters, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That was one of the things. Was I set it out with two audiences, basically people who are already on our side. Let's arm them with facts and help them articulate good arguments. I'm a storyteller. That's what I do. Then the other part, you have the people who are kind of on the fence. They might be anti-gun in that that's what they've been taught their whole lives. That's what the news tells them. They're the people who get preyed upon with the whole emotional knee-jerk reaction thing that the media loves. That's the people Gavin Newsom is trying to sway when he comes out dancing in the blood. So I wrote this basically for everybody. Obviously, I don't think Shannon Watts is going to buy a bunch of copies to give to her friends. But this
maybe
is
for the bonfire.
I still get royalties, so if she wants to buy them and burn them, I'm okay. We'll print more. I mean, we can do another print run. That's not a problem. But no, I wrote it for example, I mean, I don't want to pick on a friend of mine, but I have a friend of mine who wants to have guns, but his wife is dead set against having guns in the house. And so he was trying to talk her into it. And, I wrote a book for people like that. This is, if you are somebody who's into this, if you want to try to sway a loved one, this is for you. That's
gotcha.
Going for it.
And listen, I mean, I think that type of advocacy, that one-on-one advocacy, right? That's really how we make a difference. It's showing up, talking to your lawmakers, that's really important. Testifying, when you can to oppose bad bills or to support good ones, that's critically important too. But when we're having our conversations with our friends and our neighbors, you're right. We have a chance to influence them and to provide the information that they're not going to get from the media, that they're not going to get from anti-gun politicians. They're certainly not going to get from people who want to take their rights away. We're able to give them. And when we're talking to our friends and neighbors, we're a trusted source, right? So they are more inclined to listen to us than they are some talking head on the TV.
Exactly. And it's all about this debate over time has changed because when I was young, 30 years ago, when I was a young guy first getting into the gun nutty world, starting to competition shoot and get involved in politics and that kind of thing, the gun culture was very different. We tended to be a little more insular. We tended to be, we joke about gun culture 1.0, 2.0, whatever. But honestly, it really was. There was much a country club kind of thing, and you had a lot of people that were like, well, I've got my hunting rifles, and I'm okay if they disarm those people. I don't like those people, that is not where we're at anymore. It's changed so dramatically in the years I've been doing this. I have watched it go from being insular, cliquish, high school mean girls cafeteria table, to being kind of seen by a lot of people as, like you said, a civil rights battle, a fundamental civil rights battle of our time. And it's become way more welcoming. The demographics have shifted too. It's no longer, the media still likes to portray it as this old white redneck thing.
Right.
And it's not at all. It's evolved, and it's everybody. The Second Amendment's for all people. And so when I'm writing this book, one of my goals is to get out in front of those people who realize that, wow, I'm it. I am my own line of defense. I am my first responder. I'm it. 2020 was awful in a lot of ways, but there was a bright side. There was a silver lining to this dark cloud, in that as America's cities were burning and chaos reigned, there was a lot of people who realized they were on their own for the first time. They had bought into the anti-gun narrative that the state's going to protect me. I'm going to be unarmed and a good citizen, and the cops will come. Well, all of a sudden, we had police departments saying, well, you know what? Don't call 911. We can't help you. You're on your own. Good luck. Gun sales in 2020 went to astronomical levels. If you look at the numbers of NICS checks, talk to any FFL in America, 2020 was crazy. And there was lines out the door, and people were paying scalpers prices for guns. And the thing is, that wasn't us. That wasn't our people. We got ours. We don't pay over retail. We don't pay MSRP. We don't stand in line. But it was new people. And so, like, talking to my local gun dealer, most of the people he had were first timers. They had never seen a 4473 before. Talking to people in states with background checks, they're having people come in. I need a gun right now. My neighborhood's on fire. Can I get whatever? And they're like, well, sorry, you got your sure, fill this out. No, well, then I'll begin your 10-day waiting period.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, I'll be dead in 10 days. And they're like, yeah, take that up with Gavin Newsom.
Right.
You know? And so there's a lot of new people over the last few years have come into this world. And honestly, and I talk about this in the book a lot, but it's our responsibility to teach these people, to train them, help them, bring them to the range, get them up to speed, direct them to good resources, get them to know about the actual law and how this stuff works.
Yeah.
But that's the future, and it's a civil rights battle, and it's for everybody. So let's go all in on this, and let's get everybody involved that we can.
Absolutely. And this book, again, a fantastic jumping off point to start that conversation with a lot of folks in defense of the Second Amendment. Larry Correia, thank you so much for coming on the program today. I hope we get a chance to do this again soon. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask, because I know my audience wants to know, what's the latest with the Monster Hunter series?
There's another Monster Hunter Memoirs spinoff coming out in October. By me and Jason Cordova. And then the next mainline book should be out in 2024. That's the next one in my queue.
All right.
Everything's about 3 months behind, though, because of Gun Book.
Well, you know what? Well, I'm okay with that. I am okay with that 3-month delay because this is a really important book. And Larry, again, real pleasure talking with you today. I hope we get a chance to do this again very soon. I'd love to have you back. I do appreciate Larry being with us on the program. Go pick up a copy of In Defense of the Second Amendment and pick up 2 or 3. Don't give any to Shannon watch. She doesn't need the firewood. But, pass them out to family and friends. And I hope, like Larry, that this book is going to have an impact, and it will make a difference in the debate going forward. Now, let's turn our attention to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day, and our recidivist report. We'll start there with a case out of Michigan where a man has pleaded guilty to carjacking an elderly woman at a Walmart in Sterling Heights, Michigan. This gentleman, no stranger to the law, unfortunately. In fact, he's got a criminal history that goes back to 2019. But Jason Graves has really never received any time behind bars for his previous offenses, even though they include violent offenses like resisting arrest, domestic violence, 2 counts of assault and battery. That led to 6 months in jail and 2 years probation. When he violated probation, he got more probation for that incident. 2020, he was charged with assault with intent to do great bodily harm and domestic violence. The assault charge was dropped. He pleads guilty to domestic violence. He gets 1 year probation. November 2020, domestic violence, 9 months in jail, 2 years probation. Supposed to have anger management, violates probation there, gets more probation. And now, again, most recently accused of carjacking an 80-year-old woman last November, throwing her to the ground. She suffered minor injuries in that attack. He was discovered a few hours later, tried to run over police, allegedly, and then crashed his car and was taken into custody. Graves is facing a potential life sentence for the carjacking charge, but he did take a plea bargain in this case, taking the plea for carjacking and assault with a dangerous weapon, while prosecutors agreed to drop charges of fleeing and eluding police as well as resisting arrest. Sentencing is March 15th. We'll see what happens for Mr. Graves here. But I would be shocked, utterly shocked, if Graves does not once again get what amounts to a slap on the wrist. Now, today's Armed Citizen story, Roswell, New Mexico, where police say a shooting at a Roswell business on Monday morning was self-defense, but this was not a case of a store customer or an employee defending themselves against an armed robber. Unfortunately, this was a case of domestic violence, according to police. They got notified about 8 o'clock Monday morning. A guy called and said, listen, there's a woman with a gun outside of this business, and she says she needs help. When officers arrived, they did find the woman still there outside the store with a firearm in hand. Inside the store, they found the woman's husband, Brian Jaramillo, with multiple gunshot wounds. According to authorities, based on interviews with the woman, as well as physical evidence that they were able to obtain at the scene, they determined that Brian Jaramillo was beating his wife and had threatened to kill her when she drew her firearm and shot in self-defense. They do not plan to file charges against the woman. Again, they believe that she was defending herself. This is a tragic situation all around. And, I am not celebrating the fact that she was put in this position, but I am very, very grateful that she was able to protect herself. It is just a heartbreaking situation that, a loved one was the person who put her at risk of death or great bodily harm. And thankfully, again, she's able to stop that assault, stop that attack, and defend her life. Today's good deed of the day from Alabama. And I feel a little weird reporting the source here because I think this is the first time I've ever used the New York Times as a good deed of the day source. But here you go. Farmer secretly paid for his neighbor's prescriptions for years. Hody Childress broadcasts every month to a pharmacist in Alabama asking her to use it to help people buy medicine. The town learned of the arrangement only after his death. This is, I got to say, even if it is the New York Times, Emily Schmall did a great job reporting on the kindness and generosity of Hody Childress, who passed away not long ago, actually, at the age of 80. And it wasn't until after he died again that the community in Geraldine, Alabama, learned that he had been providing money to local pharmacists to help those who were struggling to cover the cost of their medication. Folks like Eli Schlager, who's 15. He needed an EpiPen, but his family kind of didn't know what to do, and they realized that one dose would cost $800, even with insurance coverage. The pharmacist found a coupon to knock a few $100s off the total, but they still didn't have the money. So the pharmacist, Brooke Walker, according to Emily Schmall, turned to an envelope full of carefully folded $100 bills from an anonymous donor and was able to provide that EpiPen for the family. Every month for more than 10 years, Hody Childress made those cash donations. Family says he grew up poor, surviving with his family on sustenance farming by hunting small game. Their house had no electricity until Mr. Childress was about 7. Childress joined the Air Force, then worked at Lockheed Martin for about 20 years until he retired in 2001. On Friday nights, he would carry his first wife, who had multiple sclerosis, up the bleachers at the local high school to watch football games, according to one of his sons. After her death from complications of multiple sclerosis, his family says he found solace in farming with his son. And his second wife, Martha Jo, as well. She recalls sitting on a combine in the Alabama heat and worrying that the heat will kill him. And she said, let me tell you something. If I die on the tractor, I'll die a happy man. Family says he also enjoyed cultivating his garden. And he would hand out, fresh produce, fresh strawberries, tomatoes, even homemade peanut brittle to the 1,000 or so residents of Geraldine, Alabama. And it was back in 2010 when he walked into Geraldine Drugs and pulled the pharmacist aside saying, I have a question. Do you ever have anybody who can't pay for their medication? She said, yeah, it happens a good bit. And so he pulled out a $100 bill and said, next time that happens, I want you to use this. He said, I want it to be anonymous. I don't want to know any details on who you use it on. Just tell them this is a blessing from the Lord. And every month afterwards, he came back until late last year when chronic obstructive pulmonary disease became so severe that he couldn't leave the home. At that point, he let his daughter in on the secret, who promised to carry on the contributions. Pharmacist says the fund has helped at least 2 people a month over the past decade who didn't have insurance or whose benefits didn't cover their prescription medication. And again, he never wanted the accolades. He never wanted the attention. He just wanted to help. I think that defines being in the right place at the right time, being willing and able to do the right thing. So Hody Childress, a life well lived in Alabama, and his legacy continues there. We thank him and his family for his very good deed and carrying that tradition on. Now, that is going to do it for this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. We will be back tomorrow. We are hopefully going to be taking a look at a lawsuit out in California taking on the state's microstamping law. Big developments this week. We will bring you the details on the next edition. In the meantime, make sure you check out BearingArms.com throughout the day. We'll keep you caught up to date on everything going on when it comes to your Second Amendment rights. good, bad, and the ugly. And unfortunately, there's a lot of that going around these days. If you like what you see, not necessarily in terms of what we're reporting on, but how we're reporting it, I would encourage you to become a VIP member. All you have to do, go to BarianArms.com/subscribe, use the promo code GUNRIGHTS, and you can get a significant savings on your VIP membership. In addition to supporting the independent pro segment of journalism we do at Barian Arms, we're going to give you exclusive content, news stories, and analysis you won't find anywhere else, because your support makes a difference, and it really does matter, so thank you. Enjoy the rest of your Hump Day Wednesday. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Until then, be well, be safe, and be free.